Hello, and welcome to the Surrendered and Abandoned Vessel Exchange, or SAVE, Grant Management webinar meeting. This meeting will focus on the process for receiving surrendered vessels and processing abandoned vessels. This presentation also includes an in-depth discussion on how to correctly prepare and submit reimbursement requests and in-kind match claim forms. My name is Ron Kent. I manage the SAVE program for California State Parks, Division of Voting and Waterways, or DVW. Let's begin with a short review of the grant award procedures. SAVE award notices are sent out each year around August via DVW's online grant application system, also known as OLGA, to the person that submitted the application for your agency. It is important to note, if the person that submitted the application is no longer with your agency, you may not be aware your agency received an award notice. Please keep DVW informed about changes in personnel by emailing the SAVE program manager, and should be within 30 days of the change. The award notice will have instructions for downloading your grant agreement from OLGA and what you need to do to execute the agreement. Be sure to follow the steps listed on the notice. You will need a resolution from your governing body that authorizes your agency to accept the grant agreement and identifies the title of the person authorized to sign the agreement. The person with signature authority will need to sign several pages of the agreement. These pages are identified in the award notice. You will have 90 days to return the signed agreement and resolution. Once you have all the signatures and the resolution, send DVW a single copy with wet signatures via regular mail and a single copy via email as instructed on the notice. Do not upload these documents into OLGA. And please note, this is not a notice to begin work. The grant agreement is not fully executed until it is signed by DVW. Once DVW has signed the grant agreement, it and an instruction letter will be sent out via OLGA to the person that submitted the application. Do not begin work until you receive the fully executed grant agreement. It is very important that every person in your agency who will be working in the SAVE program, including billing staff, be aware of the provisions in the grant agreement. DVW advises that you and any staff that will be working in the SAVE program read the fully executed agreement and instruction letter prior to beginning work. If any changes have been made to the grant agreement, these will be highlighted in the instruction letter. Forms required for managing a SAVE grant can be downloaded from OLGA without logging in. These instructions are provided in the instruction letter. This concludes the review of the award procedures. Next, we will cover managing a SAVE grant. Let's review Harbors and Navigation Code 525, which governs SAVE. Harbors and Navigation Code 525 is the sole governing statute for the SAVE grant program. The statute states funds shall be used for grants awarded to local agencies for the abatement, removal, storage, and disposal as public nuisances of abandoned and surrendered vessels. These grants shall not be utilized for disposal of commercial vessels. Harbors and Navigation Code 525 refers to Harbors and Navigation Code 522 and 526.1, so I will summarize those as well. Harbors and Navigation Code 522 describes eligible abandoned property as any hulk, derelict, wreck, or parts of any ship, vessel, or other watercraft, sunk, beached, or allowed to remain in an unseaworthy or dilapidated condition upon publicly owned submerged land for a period longer than 30 days without a watchman. Harbors and Navigation Code 526.1 states, surrendered vessels mean a recreational vessel that the verified title holder has willingly surrendered to a public agency. To summarize, vessels that are eligible for SAVE program are 1. Abandoned vessels that are registered recreational pleasure and are abandoned in or adjacent to a public waterway and not in a marina. And 2, surrendered vessels that are registered recreational pleasure and surrendered by the verified owner or person with legal interest. It's important to have an understanding of the terms used in managing SAVE. Some of the most common are listed here. 1. An abandoned vessel. This is a recreational vessel or parts thereof abandoned in or adjacent to a public waterway. Funds assist is a grant provision that allows using available funding from one SAVE agency to assist another SAVE agency from the same SAVE fiscal year award. Recreational pleasure vessel. This is the type of vessel eligible to be destroyed using SAVE. This must be indicated on the vessel title document. Service provider. This is a contracted provider that performs services related to towing, title search or vessel survey, removal and disposal of hazardous materials, and final destruction of a vessel. Surrender vessel is a recreational vessel turned in by the verified owner or person with proof of legal interest. Zero balance invoice. This is an invoice from your service provider with a description of services performed, amount billed for those services, dates of services, the vessel identifier, and shows a zero amount owed. Each agency received a SAVE reimbursement checklist for abandoned vessels and another for surrendered vessels. These are shown on the slide for reference and are available in OLGA. Use this checklist for each vessel you remove or that is surrendered to you. Whenever you are not sure if a vessel will be eligible for SAVE funding, you should contact DBW for approval prior to removing or accepting the vessel. Here's a list of allowable expenses for abandoned vessels. Raising and removing from a public waterway, removal and disposal of hazardous materials, towing, storage, lien sale expenses, and demolition. Raising and removing. Before raising a fully submerged vessel, you should seek prior approval from DBW. There are many factors to be considered. For example, is the vessel several feet below the surface and only a small portion is creating a hazard? It may be feasible to remove just this section at a fraction of the cost rather than removing the entire vessel. It does not include vessels that are abandoned in marina slips, which must be surrendered by the marina to be destroyed with SAVE funding. Hazardous material removal. DBW will reimburse the cost for removing and disposing of any hazardous materials. Towing. Make it a habit to consult DBW before authorizing an expensive tow. Abandoned vessels may not need to be towed, and some can be safely sunk. Storage. DBW will reimburse 50% of your facility's posted rates for 60 days without a lien sale, an additional 30 days, or a total of 90 days with a lien sale. If using a contracted facility, 60 to 90 days at their posted rates. Lien sale. Costs associated with conducting a lien sale can be reimbursed by SAVE. Salving and demolition. DBW Grant Agreement Exhibit B, Item 10, requires that you provide us with a copy of the contracts you have with your salvage or demolition vendors. Please send me a copy of these contracts once signed by all parties. Let's review the process for removing and destroying abandoned vessels. When a vessel is first discovered, take a photo showing the location and the condition of the vessel. If the vessel has identification, like CF number or the hull identification number, make sure it is seen in the photograph. Also, record the GPS location, which needs to be included on the reimbursement claim form. If the vessel has identifiers, you must follow your local laws as well as harbors and navigation codes by tagging the vessel and beginning a lien process. Once you have determined the type of vessel, making sure it's recreational or pleasure, and have identified the last known registered owner, send them a citation for abandonment of a vessel. Once the lien process is complete, If the vessel was not reclaimed by the owner or sold, it can now be destroyed. Make sure that your salvage vendor includes the same ID on their invoice that field staff used when tagging the vessel, and that this ID is included on the reimbursement claim form. Here's an example of an abandoned vessel claim form that is filled out correctly. First, let me state that if the remittance address or payment mailing address is different from the general mailing address, please make sure to use the remittance address on the claim form. The contract number will be from your grant agreement. Very important is the grant fully executed date. This is the date that DBW signed the agreement. It is found on the first page of the grant agreement. On line 1, enter the first vessel listed on your salvager invoice. Note, the CF or HIN needs to be on your salvager invoice. Mark if the vessel is a motor vessel or sailing vessel. Here, you need to provide the GPS coordinates of where the vessel was first discovered. This column is for the dates work was completed and the vessel was destroyed. The last column is for the cost of the service. The total from this page will auto-populate in this box. If there are 10 or less vessels, you will put your match in one or both of these boxes. I will discuss match in detail later. With claims of 11 or more vessels, carry the total cost to line 1 on the next page. Label the first page 1 of 2 or more as needed. This is what the second page will look like. Label it 2 of 2 or more as needed. Carry the totals from page 1 to line 1 of page 2 and continue. Make sure all the other information is correct, like agency name, address, etc. If this is the last page, you'll enter the match and the total reimbursement request will calculate automatically. Match can be in kind, cash, or a combination of both. In this case, the grantee used all in-kind match. Again, I'll talk more about match later. One other note, please do not fill in any boxes labeled DBW use only. These boxes are in the upper and lower right of the claim form. Now let's look at supporting documents. We can start with abandoned vessel claims. You will need a copy of your vendor salvager invoice, proof of payment, and a photo of the vessel when first discovered. For abandoned vessels, do not include a photo of a vessel that's in a yard or on a trailer, etc. Here's an example of a salvager invoice. Each vessel is listed with a CF or other identifier that matches what is on the claim form. As stated before, vessels should be listed in the same order on the claim form as they are on the invoice. It is important that there are detailed description of the work performed on the invoice. Additionally, it shows the date services were performed and amount for each vessel. The invoice has the name of the salvage vendor, an invoice number, and a billing date. You'll notice this invoice has multiple vessels listed. In this case, you will need to provide a copy of the invoice for each vessel and highlight the vessel being claimed. However, we only require one proof of payment to be submitted for multiple vessel invoices. Proof of payment will be placed with the first set of supporting documents of the vessel you are entering on the claim form. Then include any other invoices and proof of payments, i.e. towing, raising, hazardous material removal, etc., for that vessel, followed by the photo of the vessel. I will demonstrate this on the next slide. Additionally, this is an example of an electronic funds transfer. It is an acceptable form of proof of payment. It shows the invoice number, the vendor name, the transaction number, and the amount matches what is on the invoice. Here's an additional invoice. This vessel had a hazardous material removal expense that was included in the total of line 1 on the claim form. Next will be proof of payment for the hazardous material removal. This proof of payment is in the form of a canceled check. Here we show the second vessel listed. Highlight the vessel on the invoice and enter it on line 2 of the claim form. Then include the photo. Repeat this process for each vessel listed on invoices with multiple vessels. To recap, for abandoned vessels, place the documents in the following order: invoice, proof of payment, then photo. The set of supporting documents for each vessel should be in the order the vessels are listed on the claim form. Only one photo is required. Black and white photos are preferred. If the photo does not show the identifier, it should show items that are listed on the claim form under Other, Provide Description, and what the vendor salvager used to describe the vessel on their invoice. In this case, color photos may be necessary. Next, we will move on to review of process of surrendered vessels. Here's a list of allowable expenses for surrendered vessels: disposal of hazardous materials, tow to the landfill or just one tow, and demolition. These are the only expenses SAVE can reimburse for a surrendered vessel. It is important to note that the grant will only reimburse for towing from your possession to the landfill. If you authorize additional tows to retrieve a vessel that's going to be surrendered, the grant will not pay for those tows unless you receive prior written approval. SAVE will not reimburse for storage of surrendered vessels. Always consult DVW before taking on a questionable expense that may not be reimbursable. Now let's review processing surrendered vessels. First, make arrangements to meet the verified vessel owner. If possible, meet them at the disposal site. Make sure they bring the required documents. A verified owner is a person that has title or legal interest in the vessel they are surrendering, and the identification information on the title or legal interest document matches the identification documentation of the person surrendering the vessel. The person's identification document can be a U.S. passport or any form of state or federal identification that has a photo and signature so you can confirm the person is who they say they are. Make sure you complete the most current version of DVW's Release of Interest and Ownership form that is available in OLGA, and that the information from their ID is recorded in the correct field. We will cover how to properly complete the Release of Interest and Ownership form a bit later in the presentation. Do not include a copy of the person's ID when submitting the reimbursement claim form to DVW. Once all paperwork is final, take a photo of the vessel showing the CF and complete the process of disposing it. Now we will look at surrendered vessel claim form. This is an example of a surrendered vessel claim form. Again, please make sure your remittance address, if it is different than the agency address. Be sure to use the correct contract number and fully executed date. For the first vessel listed, you can see there is no CF, but there is a vessel name. When there's no CF, but there's a vessel name, this is what needs to be on all the vendor invoices and the claim form. Again, check that the vessel is either motor or sail. Make sure to mark the boxes verified and release obtained. This is to verify that the accepting official from your agency confirmed that the person surrendering the vessel had proper title and that the person surrendering the vessel filled out the Release of Interest and Ownership form. Complete the other fields, including match, following the same instructions as the abandoned vessel claim form. Please note, the match on this form is a combination of in-kind and cash, which I'll discuss in more detail later. One last note, do not use DVW-only boxes. Let's look at examples of supporting documents for surrendered vessels. The required documents include invoice, proof of payment, title or legal interest, DBW release of interest and ownership form, and a photo. Here's an example of an invoice that is also a proof of payment. This is a zero balance invoice. It shows the vessel name, services provided, and an amount. The total due is 0. That means this has been paid and can serve as proof of payment. The next document will be proof of title or proof of legal interest. Let's look at what is acceptable for title or proof of legal interest. A signed pink slip, a DMV issued registration, it does not have to be current, a DMV issued junk slip in the name of the person surrendering the vessel, the Coast Guard document, this is a 2-page document, and the signature on the second page must be from the person listed on the first page, death certificate with power of attorney from the person that is surrendering the vessel, a DMV issued lien document showing person surrendering and or marina that has legal interest, a clutch report showing a last registered owner or the buyer as the same person that is surrendering the vessel. The common requirement for all these is that the person surrendering the vessel is listed on the title or legal interest document and has an ID that matches the information from the title or lien documents. All documents should state the vessel is registered recreational or pleasure. Here are examples of less common proofs of title or legal interest. A DMV issued junk slip and a lien holder document. Both documents show the name of the person that surrendered the vessel. The document on the right is the final lien document issued by DMV. Please do not submit verification of lien sale, a notice of pending lien sale, or vessel transfer and reassignment forms. These are not final lien documents and do not establish legal interests. Here's a good example of a properly filled out DBW release of interest and ownership form. Each of the boxes is filled out correctly and agency staff completed the Save Agency Use Only box. Please note the ID box has been filled in. This is a very important item and needs to be filled out to confirm that the agency staff checked the ID of the person surrendering the vessel and that it matched the title documents. The last supporting document will be the photo of the surrendered vessel showing the CF number or other identifier. Now let's review in-kind match. If you're going to use in-kind as your match, you must provide a wage verification statement from your payroll department. The statement must include the name and base hourly wages, that's wages without benefits, of each person listed on the match statement. You only need to provide this once at the beginning of the grant term or with the first reimbursement request. However, if wages change, you will need to provide updated wage statements from your payroll department. Use actual time worked and list in-date order. Only include 1 staff per line and no more than a maximum of 8 hours per day. If multiple pages are needed, carry over the total time and dollar value from each page and add these to line 1 on the next page. Label the pages 1 of 2 and 2 of 2 as needed. Here's page 2 of a match statement. The total from page 1 is at the top of page 2. The amount of match must be at least 10% of the amount of the subtotal from the abandoned or surrendered claim form. Excess match provided can be applied on future claims within the same grant. If it does not, you must enter the difference in cash and subtract that amount from the subtotal. The remainder will be the amount of your total reimbursement. Remember, match can be a combination of in-kind and cash to reach the 10% requirement. Some agencies use all cash. Some agencies record enough time so their match is in kind. This amount is entered onto the abandoned and/or surrendered vessel claim form in-kind box and is not deducted from the reimbursement subtotal. Make sure you do not double count your in-kind match by entering the full amount on more than one reimbursement claim form. One thing I'd like to demonstrate is how to populate the claim form when you are using a combination of in-kind and cash, as shown on this surrendered vessel claim form. This grantee has only $728.75 of in-kind match available, but they owe $2,070. In this case, you put all of your in-kind in the left box, and you will enter the balance of match owed in the cash match. This will deduct $1,341.25 from your reimbursement. The total reimbursement request will populate here. California Vehicle Code 9864 states the destruction of a vessel must be reported to DMV within 15 days thereof. All SAVE agencies need to be sure they are notifying DMV of abandoned and/or surrendered vessels that they are destroying within 15 days of destruction. DMV does not offer a standard procedure for providing this information. You will need to contact your local DMV office to find out what they will accept for meeting the 15-day notification requirements. Here are some final notes for managing SAVE. Do not include documents that are not required, such as extra photos, copies of internal accounting documents, copies of purchase orders, multiple versions of release of interest documents, incidents reports, etc. And please do not send us two-sided copies. Full color pages are not necessary. Smaller images in black and white are sufficient unless the vessel does not have identifiers. Then color photos may be necessary to properly identify the vessel. For any unusual circumstances, always seek DBW advice prior to authorizing work to be reimbursed by SAVE. Email is the most preferred method of reaching us. Harbors and Navigation Code encourages each SAVE funding recipient to have a well-written Submerged Navigation Hazard Abatement Plan, or SNAP, to identify strategies and a source of funding for the prevention of abandoned vessels and for removal of substantial navigational hazards, such as submerged objects, logs, abandoned piers and/or boarding floats, vehicles, etc., which are not eligible for reimbursement using SAVE. From the SAVE applications, there were many applications that had a SNAP plan explaining how the agency addressed or processed abandoned vessels, or they had no SNAP plan at all. Please be advised, a SNAP is your agency's plan for addressing and funding submerged navigational hazards that are not vessels. DBW is encouraging SAVE grantees to find ways to provide maximum cost efficiencies. Some ideas for accomplishing cost efficiency include destroying multiple vessels at one time, working with marinas who can accommodate on-site destruction, making arrangements for surrendered vessels to be delivered to the landfill by the owner, and finding ways for hauling vessels directly to the landfill. Other ideas are actively promoting surrender vessel program, securing a partner who can provide no-cost storage for vessels, having a thorough SNAP that identifies ways to prevent abandoned vessels in the first place, hiring contractors or towing companies to move vessels instead of salvagers, limit the number of in-water tows, and having a variety of service contracts so you aren't calling an expensive salvager for work that can be done by a less expensive vendor. That concludes my presentation. This is the SAVE contact person if you'd like more information.